Hi, welcome to my Instagram account, and I know that yesterday I said that I would give a brief explanation on how I did some of the Americana wall decor with the distressed look to it. So today I thought I'd give it's not really so much of a how-to but more of an explanation. So I had these two Americana wall decor items that I made from used cutting boards that I picked up at the Goodwill. So the question is, how do you go from something like this to something like this? So what I would do first, and this is a little bit of a different size, I also picked this one up at the Goodwill. I'll probably put a barn star on it. But what I would do is I would take this cutting board, and again, I usually pick up used ones at the Goodwill for a cheap price. And I would take some sandpaper, about a medium grain sandpaper, and I would go over it just lightly, scoring it up some, make sure to go around the edges and the sides. That way the paint can stick to it easier, and any finish that might be on it will come off. Okay, so that's the first step. Sand it, then you want to wipe off all the dust from the sandpaper. You even use a damp paper towel to do that. And then I would take some Rust-Oleum just white spray paint, and I would spray paint it, and then you want to let it dry really well. So normally I would actually let it sit for at least a few hours, sometimes even overnight, because I found that when I do it too soon, when I do the next step, the paint comes off too much. Okay, so let it dry, and then once it's dry, I would take fine grit sandpaper, which I just lost. Here it is. I would take some fine grit sandpaper, and then once it's spray painted white, then I take the fine grit sandpaper and I go along the edges of it, because that's usually when a piece is legitimately worn down. That's usually where some of the paint would wear off. And so I would take it and I would go around the edges, and then I also go along the surface of it, not a lot though, not even necessarily enough to take the paint off, but more kind of like the top of the spray paint. Again, not a lot, just a little bit, and if some of the paint comes off, that's okay, it's not a big deal, it'll be fine for the next stage. And then I don't know if you can see some of the marks on here. You see some of these marks here and there. If your cutting board doesn't already have some marks on it like this, some indents, what you can do is you can hit it with a hammer a few times. You can hit it with a chain a few times. I actually have some rocks right next to my workspace here, and so I lay it down on the rocks and step on it, and it'll make some of these indents on it. So this is the stage you would do that. After you've spray painted it and sanded it a little bit, you would make those marks on it. It helps give it that worn and used look. And also, one of the neat things with cutting boards, if it is really well used, it has a lot of cuts in it already, and so that will show up with the next stage as well. Okay, so you have it sanded and then spray painted, and then sanded again. You've put the marks in it. Now it's time to add a little bit of that distressed color to it. So what I did is I took this Varathane wood stain. The color is weathered gray. Okay, weathered gray. And I just picked this up at Ace Hardware. I'm sure they sell it at Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that as well. So the weathered gray stain, and you take a cloth. I have lots of ones that look like this. If anybody knows how to wash stain out of these cloths, let me know. So you take a staining cloth and you dip it in the gray stain, just a little bit. You don't need a lot. I usually just cover about that much of my fingers with the stain on the cloth, and you go over the white spray paint on it. Okay, this gray stain I found is a little more sticky and gooey than just regular straight stain. It's almost like a cross between stain and paint. And so I put a light cover of it. I don't pour it on. It's not a bunch. I just go over it just enough over the top of it and along the sides again. And that's when you're going to see these marks start to show up dark like that. Okay, so then once you've gone over it with the stain, then you take another cloth to wipe the stain off, but you don't get the whole stain off when you wipe it off. Like I said, it leaves the darker areas around the edge that you sanded. It leaves any areas you sanded on the top that the paint came off. It leaves those areas dark, and it leaves the kind of like marks and scratches and stuff like that. It leaves it gray. So it has that kind of like weathered barnyard look on it that is really popular, and I happen to really like. So once you're done with that, then you want to leave it for a while just to make sure it's good and dry after you've wiped as much stain off as you want. And then after it's good and dry, and again, this is before you're putting the decorations on it. After it's good and dry, I use this matte clear, Rust-Oleum matte clear, to spray a good finish on it. Helps to seal it and protect it, because you don't want any of that stain coming off on your walls or anything like that. And then after that's done, it's time for the decorations. And as far as the barn star goes, you can buy them already like this. You can buy barn stars. I got tired of buying my barn stars. Hobby Lobby does sell some really nice ones. I think they're $2.99 right now online. And they look like this. I don't know if you can see that. They look like this barn star. And I thought that barn star was perfect for this piece that I did. But like I said, I got tired of buying them all the time. And I have a Sizzix machine for die cutting. So Sizzix has a die cut. It's called Star Bright 3D. Okay, and if you can see, it's going to cut out the star for me. And the material I use for the star, so I cut this off of a sorry, the sun's in my eyes, that's why I'm look like I'm winking at you. This I cut off the bottom of those like disposable cookie trays, so it's kind of like just that almost like a Coke can consistency of metal. You can get those at the dollar store, you can get them at Safeway, Fry's, grocery stores, Walmart, whatever, and they're usually pretty cheap, and I can get quite a few stars out of one of the cookie sheets. So I cut the edges off around it, and then I cut it down to size to fit the die and go through my Sizzix Big Shot. So it cuts them out, and when it's cut out, it's going to be really flat. This one I'd already bent once, but I tried to flatten it out to show you. It's going to come out really flat, but it's going to come out with those creases in it, and then you just fold it along the creases to make the barnyard shape. And then to paint the barnyard stars, so I don't know if it's necessary or not. I do take either a medium grain or fine grain piece of sandpaper and just go over it lightly to score it so the paint can stick on it better. Again, I don't really know if that's necessary or not, but I'd rather do it than not do it and the paint come off easily. So okay, so, and there you go. There's the barn star, cut out with my Sizzix machine. And again, I already had the Sizzix machine. If you don't have a Sizzix machine, you can buy the barnyard stars. Yeah, so then I just take a piece of sandpaper, fine grain or medium grain, doesn't really matter, and I go over it just to scratch it up a little bit, and then I spray paint it. So for like this one, I used the Rust-Oleum, what color is this? Satin Colonial Red spray paint for it. Get it good and dry. Let it dry for a while. If it needs a second coat, spray a second coat on it after it's dry. It may or may not. I've done both ways, just one coat or two coats. So then you have your barn star. And then for the ribbon around it, I had this burlap ribbon. I believe this is from Hobby Lobby. Yep, this one's from Hobby Lobby. So I cut out the size that I needed to go around it, and then I spray painted it blue. With the Rust-Oleum, this is called Evening Navy. And this is ultra matte. I don't really go for ultra matte usually, but it's what the store had at the time. But I tend to think that the color is great for the Americana items. So this is actually spray painted burlap. Now you can buy burlap different colors, but I don't really see a need to, and I can, if it's just such a small piece, and I can just spray paint it real quick. Okay, so then all I did was hot glue the burlap ribbon onto the back. I hot glued it. I think I also put a couple of spots of hot glue on the front as well as in the back. And then now you have your barn star, and it's all spray painted, the nice red color, but you want it to look a little bit distressed as well. So if you see, I went along the creases, I colored along the creases. What I did there, and it's a really easy technique, I learned it from somebody else online. I can't remember who. It might have been Kelly Barlow Creations that I learned it from on YouTube. I can't remember exactly. But I took some, and this is just some Sizzix black ink, and I went along the creases of the star with a paintbrush, and you're just kind of smushing it, and it'll make that coloring along the creases of the star. So let me grab the star, and this isn't spray painted, but you can see that going along the creases, it gives it that blackened, kind of worn and distressed look. Okay, so now you have your star, and it's red, and you've put in the markings along the creases of the barn star. So then I just, and you have your ribbon all hot glued onto the board, and then I just hot glue the barn star onto that. And then we're almost done after that. For up here, this is just twine from the dollar store, and the dollar store sells a 3-pack of these rolls of twine for $1. Dollar Tree is from the Dollar Tree, and you get it in the hardware section. If you get it in the craft section, it's a very similar item, but it's more expensive. But if you get at the Dollar Tree, if you get it in the hardware section, again, it comes in 3 rolls of twine, and I use twine all the time in my crafts, so I always have it on hand, and I just hot glued that to the back so it can hang on somebody's wall in their kitchen or something. If you don't want to do it that way, you can just attach a little picture hanger on the back of it and hang it that way instead of having the twine. You can really do it either way. So yeah, so there you go. That's how you can go from something like this to something like this. Thank you for joining me and watching me. Please follow my Instagram page. Please like this video. Make a comment for me down there. Tell me how you liked it. This was my first video on my Instagram account, so I would love some feedback from you guys. Thank you very much. Bye.